The city was alive with people moving quickly from one place to another. Cars honked on the streets, and shopkeepers shouted to get attention from anyone walking by. Among all the noise and movement, a large hall had been set up for a trade fair. Inside, rows of stalls displayed everything from clothes to handmade items. The air smelled faintly of perfume, coffee, and fresh paper. Each stall owner tried to catch the eyes of visitors, smiling, calling out, offering samples. It was a place where people came to find new products, to make deals, and sometimes just to see the creativity on display. At one corner of the hall, a small but neat stall displayed colorful handmade soaps. They were arranged in boxes and on small wooden stands. The soap saleswoman stood behind the stall. She was wearing a simple dress and a soft smile. Her hands were busy arranging the soaps while she greeted each visitor warmly. She spoke with kindness and patience, explaining how each soap was made with care, what ingredients were used, and how the products could help the skin feel smooth and refreshed. Even when people walked past without stopping, she did not frown. She simply waved politely and moved on to the next person. The soap saleswoman had been in this business for several years. She loved making soaps because it allowed her to create something useful and beautiful with her hands. She liked helping people choose what they needed and watching them smile when they found something they liked. She never aimed to become rich or famous. For her, it was enough to do her work honestly and kindly. Every soap she made had a little piece of her heart in it. Meanwhile, the CEO of a large company entered the hall. He was tall, wearing a sharp suit that looked expensive, and his face was set in a serious expression. He moved through the stalls quickly, scanning everything with sharp eyes. People around him noticed how he spoke to the stall owners. He asked questions that sounded more like challenges than curiosity. He interrupted explanations and criticized presentations with a blunt tone. The CEO had a reputation for being rude. He believed in results above everything else, and often pushed people hard to get what he wanted. He had many employees in a big office, but rarely listened to anyone. His world was fast. He believed life was about winning and being ahead of others. When he reached the soap stall, he stopped. The colors and arrangement caught his attention, but he immediately frowned. He leaned slightly over the counter and said, "I do not understand why anyone would buy these. They look simple and cheap." He was direct, and his voice had a sharp edge. The soap saleswoman looked up and smiled. She had expected some visitors to be doubtful or dismissive. Many people had told her that handmade soaps were too small or too plain for their tastes. She remained calm and said, "These soaps are made with natural ingredients and care. They are gentle on the skin and safe for everyone." She spoke quietly but clearly, her voice carrying calm confidence. She did not argue, and she did not try to impress him with fancy words. She simply stated the truth. The CEO raised his eyebrows. He had not expected such a reply. Most people he spoke to would have tried to flatter him, argue back, or become defensive. This woman simply answered him honestly and kept smiling. For a moment he felt a strange mix of annoyance and curiosity. He could not understand why someone would remain so calm in front of him. He asked again, why should anyone pay attention to these when there are bigger brands with fancy packaging? She was patient. The larger brands spend money on advertising and design, she said, but the value of a product is in its quality and care, not in how loud it can be. Advertised, the CEO looked at the soaps more closely. He touched one lightly, feeling its smooth surface. He noticed the subtle scents, the colors, the way each piece seemed carefully made. Despite himself, he felt a small sense of admiration. He had seen many products that looked impressive, but had no substance. These soaps were simple, yet they had something genuine about them. He shook his head slightly, trying to hide his reaction. The saleswoman continued talking to other visitors, answering questions and offering samples. She never gave him special attention, treating him the same as anyone else. This made him even more intrigued. He was not used to being treated like an ordinary person. Most people fawned over him, hoping to gain his favor or impress him. This woman treated him like everyone else, with politeness and respect. He stayed at the stall longer than he expected. Listening to her explain the benefits of different soaps, he asked a few more questions, mostly to test her knowledge and patience. She answered each one without frustration, always gentle and clear. People around them noticed the unusual scene. A known CEO who usually hurried through events and looked impatient was standing quietly listening to a small soap vendor. It was unusual enough to catch attention, but no one interrupted. They watched silently as the exchange continued. Finally, the CEO spoke again, softer this time. "I do not usually spend time on something like this." She looked at him with the same gentle smile. "That is all right," she said. "Sometimes the smallest things can have the biggest impact." She did not say it to impress him or to teach him a lesson. It was simply what she believed, and it came naturally. The CEO nodded slightly, feeling a strange warmth in her words. It was not the praise or admiration he was used to. It was simple, honest, and kind. After a while, he moved away from the stall but kept looking back as he walked. The soap saleswoman continued her work arranging soaps and greeting visitors. She did not seem to notice whether he had left or not. Her focus was on her craft and on the people who stopped by. The CEO realized that her presence, her calmness, and her kindness had made an impression on him. He was not sure why, but he felt a curiosity he had not felt in a long time. It was not about business or profit. It was about something simple and human. He could not stop thinking about how different she was from everyone else he knew. The rest of the fair continued as usual. Other visitors came and went, and the stalls were busy with questions and sales, yet the CEO kept returning to the soap stall whenever he had a moment. Each time he listened, asked questions, and observed. The soap saleswoman continued her work, unaware of the growing interest of this important visitor. She treated him kindly, as she treated everyone, never judging, never showing impatience. Her attitude was consistent, gentle, and honest. By the end of the day, the hall began to empty. Stall owners packed their products and chatted about how the event had gone. The soap saleswoman carefully arranged her soaps for storage, checking each one for quality. She smiled quietly to herself, thinking about the people who had come and what they had said. The CEO walked past her one last time before leaving the hall. He nodded slightly, not as a sign of authority, but as a silent acknowledgement of something he could not fully explain. He left with a mix of thoughts, feeling unexpectedly moved by a simple encounter. That day marked the beginning of something new, something that neither of them could have predicted. A rude CEO and a kind soap saleswoman had met in a crowded hall, and something subtle had changed. The CEO had learned that power and wealth could not replace honesty and kindness. The soap saleswoman had reminded him, without intending to, that even the busiest, most powerful people could pause, listen, and feel something genuine. Their paths had crossed, and it had planted a small seed of curiosity, respect, and perhaps something more. The day ended quietly, but the memory lingered. And the story of this meeting was just beginning. Days passed after the trade fair. But the CEO could not stop thinking about the soap stall and the kind saleswoman who ran it. He had seen many people in his life, and he believed he understood character, but she was different. She did not act impressed by his position or wealth. She did not seek attention or praise. She simply spoke with honesty and cared for the work she did. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how rare it was to meet someone so genuine. He found himself wanting to learn more, not about the business or the product, but about her approach to life and work. He returned to the fair a week later. The hall was again filled with energy, with different stalls showing their goods. He walked slowly this time, taking time to observe, not rushing like he usually did. He wanted to find her stall again, and when he did, he stopped in front of it, quietly noting how neatly everything was arranged. The soaps were colorful, and there were small signs explaining the ingredients and benefits. The atmosphere felt calm and inviting. Stark contrast to the usual hectic world he lived in, the saleswoman greeted him with the same gentle smile as before. She did not treat him differently from the other visitors. She offered him a small sample of one of her soaps, explaining how it was made with natural oils and herbs. The CEO listened carefully, noticing how her words were simple but thoughtful. He asked a few questions about the process, the ingredients, and how she managed her business. Each time she answered, she was patient and clear. Her voice was steady, and there was a warmth in her tone that made the CEO feel calm. It's almost as if the busy world outside did not exist. As he continued to visit, a subtle bond began to form. He started to see beyond her stall and her products. He saw her dedication, the way she treated every visitor with respect, the way she answered questions honestly, without exaggeration or showmanship. It was unlike anything he had experienced in his corporate life, where everything was about appearances and profit. He began to question his own behavior, how often he pushed people hard, demanded results, and overlooked the human side of work one afternoon. As he visited the stall again, he found her talking to a young customer. She explained the ingredients gently, asked about the customer's skin type, and suggested a soap that would be most helpful. The customer smiled and thanked her before leaving. The CEO watched quietly, noticing how much trust and respect she had earned from people without demanding it. He realized that kindness and honesty created connections that no amount of money or status could buy. He felt a mix of admiration and envy. He wished he had learned these lessons earlier. In his life, curiosity led him to ask more personal questions, not about business, but about how she started making soaps and why she chose this path. She shared that she had always loved working with her hands and that making something useful for others gave her happiness. She spoke about the challenges she faced, the long hours, and the careful attention required to maintain quality. But she never complained or made it sound like a burden. Instead, she spoke with pride and calm joy. The CEO realized that she measured success differently. It was not about wealth or recognition. It was about doing the work well and treating people with respect. Over the next few weeks, he kept visiting, sometimes bringing colleagues along, though he rarely said much to them. He listened, observed, and occasionally asked a question. Each visit left him reflecting on his own life, thinking about how he interacted with people at work and how he could change. He noticed that even small gestures mattered. A smile, a patient answer, a simple acknowledgement could create respect and trust. He began to see the world differently, not just the business world, but human interactions in general. The soap saleswoman noticed his visits, but did not change her behavior. She continued to treat him as she treated everyone else. She never acted impressed or curious about his status. She focused on her work, on providing a good experience for her customers, and on sharing her knowledge about the products. The CEO found this remarkable. In his life, people often acted differently depending on who he was. She treated him with the same respect she would show to anyone. This consistency and authenticity made him feel something he had not felt in years. A quiet comfort and trust in someone else one day. During a conversation about the ingredients of a new soap, he asked her how she decided which combinations worked best. She smiled and said that she listened to feedback, watched carefully, and trusted her instincts. She said that success came from paying attention to details and caring about people who used her products. He thought about his own business decisions. He realized that he had often ignored feedback, rushed through processes, and focused on outcomes rather than people. He felt a sense of regret mixed with determination to change the more he interacted with her. The more he understood the difference between her world and his. In her world, success was measured by trust, respect, and care. In his, success was measured by numbers, profits, and reputation. He began to see that the two worlds did not have to be separate. He could take lessons from her approach and apply them to his life and business. It was a slow realization, but each visit reinforced it. Each conversation reminded him that change was possible. He found himself thinking about her at unexpected times, recalling her words, her calm manner, and her gentle advice. He noticed that his mood changed after visiting her stall. He felt lighter, calmer, more reflective. He began to consider how he could implement some of the lessons he was learning. He realized that leadership was not just about being tough and demanding. It was also about listening, respecting, and showing genuine care for others. He had never thought of it this way before. One evening, after the fair had closed, he stayed behind to speak with her privately. He wanted to understand more about her philosophy and how she remained so patient and kind despite challenges. She spoke openly about the importance of values, of treating people the way she would like to be treated, and of finding joy in simple things. He listened quietly, absorbing each word. He did not interrupt or challenge her. For the first time, he felt that he could learn something meaningful from someone outside his usual circle over time. The CEO noticed small changes in himself. He started paying more attention to how he spoke to employees, listening more than before, asking questions without rushing to judgment. He began to see that kindness did not make him weak, but it did make him more effective and respected. He still faced challenges and stressful situations, but the perspective he was gaining helped him manage them differently. The soap saleswoman remained largely unaware of the deep impact she was having. She continued her work with the same dedication and warmth, helping customers, explaining products, and maintaining quality. Her actions were natural, not intentional lessons. Yet, through her consistency and integrity, she had become a quiet teacher for the CEO, showing him that human connection and genuine care were as valuable as strategy and ambition. As the days went on, the CEO looked forward to each visit, not just for the products, but for the experience of being around someone authentic. He appreciated the calm, the honesty, and the warmth she offered without expectation. It reminded him that even in a fast-paced world of deals and decisions, there were moments of quiet learning and reflection. His visits became a ritual, a space where he could pause and consider what truly mattered. The growing connection between them was subtle. There were no grand gestures or dramatic events. It was built on repeated interactions, small conversations, and shared attention to detail and care. Each encounter reinforced lessons about patience, respect, and sincerity. The CEO was learning that change was not sudden, but a process nurtured by consistent example and reflection. Each visit to the stall left him feeling inspired to be a better leader, a better person, and a better listener. By the end of this period, a transformation had quietly begun. The CEO was still busy, still making decisions, and still managing his company. But he was more aware of the human side of interactions. He was beginning to value kindness and honesty, not just in business, but in life. He had found a mentor of sorts, not in a traditional sense, but in the quiet, steady example of a soap saleswoman who lived her values every day. The stage was set for deeper lessons and challenges that would continue to shape him and their growing connection. The CEO's visits became more frequent, not just to observe the soaps, but to watch the way she interacted with people. He noticed how she listened carefully to each visitor, asking simple questions to understand their needs. She did not rush anyone and never made anyone feel unimportant. Every action seemed natural, not forced. He realized that her strength was quiet, subtle, and consistent. It was not the loud authority he was used to seeing in his business world. It was something softer, but far more powerful. He began to pay attention to his own behavior at work. He remembered how he often interrupted employees, demanded quick results, and overlooked feelings. Comparing that with the calm, patient way the soap saleswoman dealt with people, he understood that he had been missing something crucial. He had thought that control and authority were enough to succeed. But now he saw that respect, patience, and listening mattered just as much. He began to ask himself questions he had not considered before. How can I treat people better? How can I lead without fear or harshness? How can I create trust one day? He arrived at her stall to find a long line of customers. She greeted each one warmly and carefully explained the soaps, making sure each person felt valued. He watched silently, amazed at her energy and focus. Despite the crowd, she never seemed flustered or tired. She moved smoothly from one person to the next, her smile never fading. He realized that this was more than salesmanship. It was care, it was respect, and it was integrity. These were qualities he had rarely seen in the people around him. He decided to engage more actively. He asked questions about customer feedback, how she managed complaints, and how she built trust. She answered honestly, explaining that she always listened first, never promised more than she could deliver, and admitted mistakes when they happened. He found himself taking notes in his mind, thinking about how he could apply these lessons to his company. The contrast between her simple, honest approach and the complex, profit-driven approach of his business world became clearer with each visit. The soap saleswoman noticed that he was paying closer attention, but she treated him with the same kindness she showed to everyone. She did not judge him or act differently because of his status. She continued to offer advice and guidance in her gentle way, always focusing on the work and the people. He realized that her influence was quiet but deep. He was learning without feeling pressured or embarrassed. He was beginning to understand the power of patience and empathy. He began observing other stall owners and employees at the fair. He noticed how some tried to impress customers with flashy displays or loud promises. They were energetic, but there was something missing. The soap saleswoman's approach was different. She built trust through honesty, consistency, and genuine care. He realized that these qualities could transform relationships not just in business but in life. He thought about his employees, his clients, and even his family. He wondered how many of them he had neglected by focusing too much on results and too little on connection over time. He started applying some of these lessons. He spoke more calmly in meetings, listened more than he interrupted, and acknowledged the efforts of his employees. He was surprised at how quickly the atmosphere changed. People responded positively when treated with respect and consideration. The CEO realized that leadership was not only about authority, but also about empathy, trust, and patience. He had learned a lesson that no seminar, book, or mentor in his corporate world had ever taught him. Meanwhile, the soap saleswoman continued her work, unaware of the impact she had on him. She did not seek recognition or control. She focused on the people around her, offering simple advice, sharing her knowledge, and showing care. Her influence was unintentional but profound. The CEO began to reflect on the irony of the situation. A small soap stall had become a classroom for him, a place where he could learn lessons that his entire career had not offered. One afternoon, a problem arose at the fair. A customer had received a soap that did not meet expectations and was upset. The soap saleswoman handled it calmly, listening to the complaint, apologizing sincerely, and offering a solution. The customer left satisfied and smiling. The CEO watched closely, realizing how different this was from how issues were handled in his company. Often complaints were met with defensiveness or delays. Here, honesty and care solved the problem immediately. He felt a mix of admiration and self-reflection, began to notice patterns in her behavior. She never rushed decisions, she never acted out of pride or ego, and she treated mistakes as opportunities to learn. He thought about his own leadership style, how often he acted quickly without listening, judged too harshly, or prioritized appearances over substance. The contrast made him reconsider many of his choices. He realized that true strength and influence came from consistency, integrity, and care rather than power or wealth. Their conversations grew deeper over time. He asked about challenges in her work, the long hours, and the sacrifices she made. She shared openly, talking about the effort required to maintain quality, the patience needed to train helpers, and the care she took in every product. He listened silently, absorbing the details. It was not just about soap or business. It was about life, values, and the way one approached work and relationships. He began to see that success was more than numbers and deals. He started to share some of his own experiences, cautiously, without boasting. He spoke about challenges he faced in running a large company, about decisions that weighed heavily on him, and about moments of doubt. She listened with the same gentle attention she gave to every visitor. Her responses were simple yet thoughtful. She did not offer complex strategies or quick fixes. Instead, she reminded him of basic truths. Treat people with respect, value, honesty, and care about the work you do. He realized how easy it was to overlook these truths in the rush of life. The CEO began to apply these lessons in small ways at work. He took time to acknowledge employees' efforts, to listen to concerns, and to show appreciation. He noticed subtle changes in morale and engagement. People were more willing to cooperate, share ideas, and feel valued. He felt a sense of satisfaction he had rarely experienced. It was not the thrill of a successful deal or a financial win, but a deeper, quieter fulfillment. He also began to notice changes in himself outside work. He was more patient in his interactions, more attentive to others, and more reflective. The calm he observed in the soap saleswoman influenced the way he thought and acted. He realized that learning from others could come from unexpected places. He had always thought he could only learn from people in his industry or at his level. Now he understood that wisdom could be found in simplicity and humility. As time passed, their connection became subtle but meaningful. There were no dramatic events or declarations, only repeated interactions that reinforced lessons about character, patience, and respect. The CEO had begun to internalize these lessons, shaping not only the way he led, but the way he lived. He began to see the world differently, appreciating the small, thoughtful actions that created trust and goodwill. The soap saleswoman remained focused on her work. Unaware of the depth of the change she was inspiring, she continued to greet visitors, share knowledge, and maintain quality with the same dedication as always. Her influence was quiet, steady, and profound. The CEO often reflected on how a simple act of honesty and care could ripple through his life. Reshaping attitudes, decisions, and priorities, he realized that the lessons he was learning went beyond business. They were about human connection, integrity, and empathy. Each visit to the stall reminded him that success was not only about ambition or power, but about how one treated others and approached life with honesty and care. He felt gratitude for the simple example set by someone who lived her values every day by the end of this period. The CEO was beginning to feel a shift in his perspective. He had started to understand that leadership, respect, and kindness were interconnected. The quiet lessons of the soap saleswoman were transforming his outlook, showing him a path toward better relationships, more thoughtful decisions, and a life guided by values rather than status. He was learning slowly, steadily, and meaningfully. And he knew that the journey was only beginning. One morning, the CEO arrived at the fair earlier than usual. The hall was quieter, and the stall owners were still setting up. The soap saleswoman greeted him with the same calm smile. He noticed that today her expression was a little more serious. She explained that she had received feedback about a batch of soaps that had not been as smooth as usual. She was concerned and wanted to correct the issue quickly. He watched her move to check each soap carefully, her hands steady, her focus unwavering. The attention she gave to quality reminded him of the importance of careful work, even when things seemed small or routine as he observed. He realized that problems were handled differently in her world. Mistakes were acknowledged openly and addressed calmly, not hidden or blamed on others. He thought about his company, where mistakes were often covered up or punished. He felt a twinge of regret. He had always believed that showing strength meant never admitting fault. Now he saw that true strength came from honesty, humility, and responsibility. The way she approached the problem quietly, yet effectively made a deep impression on him later. A customer arrived upset because a soap had caused mild irritation. The saleswoman listened carefully, without interrupting or arguing. She apologized sincerely and suggested a solution, explaining how the soap was made and what might have caused the problem. She offered a replacement, ensuring that the customer felt heard and respected. The CEO watched closely, feeling a mixture of admiration and introspection. He realized that handling conflict with care and respect could create loyalty and trust. Far more than authority or dominance ever could. He decided to ask her how she managed such situations without becoming frustrated. She explained that she focused on understanding people and staying calm. She said that stress and anger often made problems worse, while patience and attention created solutions. Her words were simple, but the CEO felt their weight. He understood that he had often let impatience and pride dictate his actions. He began to see how much he could learn from this approach, not just for work, but for life in general. During the next few visits, he began to notice more subtle lessons. He observed how she spoke to assistants and helpers, never commanding, but guiding. She gave instructions gently, explained clearly, and corrected mistakes without criticism. The CEO reflected on his own leadership style. He had often demanded results without explanation, criticized openly, and caused fear or tension. Watching her made him realize that respect and patience could achieve better results and create a healthier environment. One afternoon, he stayed longer, asking her about her business philosophy. She shared that she believed in honesty, hard work, and caring for people. She said that shortcuts or false promises could bring temporary success. But lasting respect came from integrity and attention to detail. She spoke with quiet conviction, not as advice, but as a reflection of her values. The CEO listened, realizing how much his own life had been driven by appearance and profit rather than principles. he began to think about challenges in his company, and he saw them differently. Problems that had seemed overwhelming now appeared manageable if handled with honesty and care. He understood that leadership was not about controlling everything, but about guiding, listening, and showing trust. He reflected on employees who had left or been unhappy, realizing that some issues could have been avoided with more patience and understanding. The lessons he learned from the soap saleswoman were reshaping his thinking. During a busy hour at the fair, the CEO noticed a conflict between two customers arguing over a soap sample. He expected the saleswoman to become flustered, but she remained calm. She spoke to each person gently, listened, and helped them find a fair solution. The argument ended with smiles and appreciation. The CEO realized that conflict did not have to be confrontational or stressful. Calmness, fairness, and attention could resolve issues effectively. He thought about disputes in his company and how he could apply this lesson as days passed. He started reflecting on his personal life. He had been so focused on work and achievements that he often neglected relationships. Watching her interact with people with care and patience reminded him that connections mattered more than titles or money. He considered family, friends, and colleagues he had overlooked. He realized that respect, listening, and empathy were essential not only in business, but in all aspects of life. He felt a growing desire to change one afternoon. A minor accident occurred when a box of soaps fell and broke. The saleswoman quickly cleaned up, ensured no one was hurt, and explained to the customer that a replacement would be ready immediately. The CEO watched in silence, noting how she remained composed and solution-focused. There was no panic, no blame, only action and care. He understood that composure under pressure was a skill he needed to develop. He reflected on times he had lost patience and caused unnecessary stress. Wishing he could handle situations with the same calm, he also noticed how she encouraged helpers without making them feel inadequate. She offered guidance gently, praised effort, and showed confidence in their abilities. The CEO realized that empowering people rather than controlling them could produce better results and create trust. He thought about his own employees and the fear or pressure they might feel under his leadership. He felt motivated to change, to create a more positive environment where people felt valued and capable during a quiet moment. He asked her about failures she had faced and how she overcame them. She shared experiences of products that did not sell, orders that were delayed, and mistakes she had made. She spoke honestly about challenges and explained how she learned from each experience. The CEO listened intently. He realized that admitting mistakes, learning from them, and moving forward was a strength, not a weakness. He reflected on how many opportunities for growth he had missed by hiding or ignoring his own errors over the following weeks. He applied small changes at work. He began to listen more, acknowledge contributions, and handle problems calmly. He found that employees responded positively, creating an atmosphere of trust and cooperation. He also noticed his own stress levels decreased. Patience and honesty, lessons learned quietly at the soap stall, were transforming not only how he managed his company, but also how he felt about his role and responsibilities. He began to see that true leadership involved both strategy and human understanding. The soap saleswoman had taught him, without intending to, that strength came from respect, patience, and integrity. He felt gratitude for her quiet example, recognizing that learning often came from unexpected sources. He realized that wisdom was not limited to experience in high positions, but could be found in simple, genuine interactions as the season progressed. He found himself reflecting daily on her words and actions. He thought about the importance of values, honesty, and the human side of work. Each lesson, small but consistent, built upon the previous ones, creating a foundation for a more thoughtful approach to life. He recognized that change was gradual, requiring awareness, patience, and effort. The soap saleswoman had become a mirror, reflecting the areas he needed to grow and guiding him subtly toward improvement by the end of this period. The CEO felt a noticeable shift in perspective. He was more considerate in his interactions, more patient with challenges, and more attentive to the needs of others. His leadership style was evolving, and he felt a deeper sense of satisfaction than ever before. The influence of the soap saleswoman, quiet and unintentional, transformed him in ways that no lecture, book, or seminar ever could. He was learning that integrity, patience, and kindness were powerful tools for success and fulfillment. Their connection remained simple, grounded in repeated interactions and mutual respect. There were no grand gestures, only consistent demonstrations of care and attention. The CEO understood that he was growing because of what he observed and experienced with her, and he felt a quiet determination to continue learning. Applying these lessons and embracing the human side of leadership and life, the stage was now set for deeper challenges and further growth that would continue to shape both. His journey and their evolving bond, the CEO had changed over the weeks without even realizing how much. Each visit to the soap stall left him feeling calmer, more thoughtful, and more aware of his actions. He had started to see the world differently, noticing small gestures, simple truths, and the value of treating people with respect. The influence of the soap saleswoman had become a part of him, shaping the way he led, the way he spoke, and the way he approached life one afternoon. The fair was busy, filled with families, business people, and curious visitors. The soap saleswoman moved among the crowd, offering advice and samples with her usual calm and warmth. The CEO watched her, noticing how naturally she interacted with everyone, how she remembered small details about customers, and how her genuine care created trust. He realized that her influence extended far beyond her products. She had taught him lessons about empathy, patience, and integrity that would last a lifetime. He approached her stall quietly, observing a young customer struggling to choose a soap. She knelt down to speak with the child, explaining the different scents and colors, asking gently about preferences, and letting the child make a choice. The CEO noticed the child's eyes light up, the smile on the mother's face, and the ease with which the situation was resolved. He thought about his own world, where decisions often caused tension and conflict. Watching her handle even a small situation with care made him understand the power of patience and attention as the day went on. He began to reflect on his own journey. He thought about how he had been rude and impatient, demanding results without considering feelings, and how that approach had cost him trust and respect. He realized that wealth and authority could not replace the value of kindness, honesty, and empathy. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the soap saleswoman who had shown him by example that small, consistent acts of care could create meaningful change later. A minor issue arose when a customer accidentally dropped a soap, breaking it. The saleswoman immediately helped the person clean up, offered a replacement, and explained how to handle the product gently. The CEO watched silently, noticing her calm approach and the respect she showed everyone. He thought about how often he had handled problems with frustration or blame. The contrast made him reconsider how he approached challenges and inspired him to adopt a more patient, solution-focused mindset. He began asking her questions about her values and philosophy. She explained that she believed in honesty, care, and consistency. She spoke about how even small actions could impact others, how listening mattered more than talking, and how trust was built over time through simple gestures. The CEO listened intently, understanding that these were lessons not only for business but for life. He reflected on missed opportunities, times when he had prioritized profit over people, and the importance of balance between ambition and compassion during quieter moments at the fair. He started sharing more about his experiences, the pressures of leadership, and the mistakes he had made. She listened with the same gentle attention she gave every visitor. Her responses were simple yet profound, often reminding him of the importance of humility, patience, and respect. Each conversation left him thoughtful, encouraging him to apply these principles in his work and personal life. He realized that growth often comes from observing and listening, not from asserting power or authority. He noticed changes in himself that surprised him. Meetings that once left him tense now felt manageable. He approached employees with more understanding, listened carefully, and acknowledged their efforts. Conflicts were handled with calm and fairness. He felt a new sense of satisfaction, not from winning deals or achieving targets, but from seeing people respond positively to respect and attention. The lessons from the soap saleswoman had transformed his approach to leadership and human interaction as the fair continued. He observed other interactions, noticing how respect and patience influenced outcomes. Stall owners who treated customers kindly earned trust, while those who rushed or pressured people faced frustration. He realized that success was not just about products or profits, but about how one treated others and approached situations. The soap saleswoman had shown him that integrity and care created lasting impact, far beyond appearances or wealth. One evening, as the fair was closing, the CEO stayed behind to speak with her privately. He expressed gratitude for the lessons she had taught him without knowing it. He explained how her calm, honest, and patient approach had influenced his leadership and personal life. She listened, her gentle smile unchanged, and reminded him that true growth came from consistent effort, reflection, and care for others. He understood that change was ongoing, requiring attention and practice, and he felt inspired to continue over the following weeks. The CEO continued to apply the principles he had learned. He encouraged collaboration, listened to feedback, and handled challenges with patience. He noticed improvements in morale, cooperation, and trust within his company. His own stress decreased as he embraced a more thoughtful approach. The lessons he had absorbed from the soap saleswoman had become ingrained, guiding him in both professional and personal decisions. He also began to notice subtle but meaningful changes in his relationships outside work. Family interactions became more respectful and attentive, friendships more understanding and supportive. He realized that the principles of empathy, patience, and honesty were universal, affecting all areas of life. The impact of a small soap stall and a kind saleswoman had extended far beyond the fair, shaping his approach to the world as time passed. The CEO found himself reflecting often on the journey he had undergone. The initial irritation and curiosity he felt when meeting her had transformed into deep respect and admiration. He understood that true influence did not require force or status. It came from consistent demonstration of care, patience, and integrity. He had learned that leadership and success were not only about achieving goals, but also about nurturing trust, respect, and connection. The soap saleswoman continued her work, unaware of the profound effect she had on him. She focused on her craft, shared her knowledge, and treated everyone with kindness and respect. Her actions were simple, genuine, and consistent, and through them, she had created a lasting impact on someone from a very different world. The CEO had learned that transformation often comes quietly, through example rather than instruction, and that true respect and trust could not be demanded. Only earned. The fair eventually ended for the season, but the lessons remained. The CEO returned to his company with a new perspective, applying the principles he had absorbed. He focused on listening, understanding, and guiding rather than controlling. His approach to problems, people, and decisions changed fundamentally. The influence of the soap saleswoman had become a guiding force, shaping his choices and interactions in meaningful ways over time. He realized that the story of their encounters was not just about business or leadership. It was about human connection, integrity, and the value of treating others with care and respect. The impact of kindness, patience, and honesty had been far greater than he could have imagined. He understood that wealth, power, and authority were secondary to character, empathy, and consistent effort in the end. The CEO and the soap saleswoman shared a bond of mutual respect and understanding, though it was quiet and understated. Their interactions had transformed him, and her influence had left an indelible mark. The CEO carried these lessons forward, not only in his company, but in all aspects of life. He had learned that small, consistent actions rooted in honesty and care could create lasting change, and that true success lay in integrity, empathy, and human connection. The journey they shared had begun with a simple encounter and had grown into a profound story of growth. Respect and transformation after the fair ended for the season. The CEO found himself reflecting on the lessons he had learned. He thought about the soap saleswoman and the way she had influenced him without realizing it. The calm, patience, honesty, and care she showed in her work had become a model for the way he wanted to live and lead. He realized that transformation was not sudden but gradual, shaped by consistent observation, reflection, and action. He returned to his company with a renewed perspective. Meetings were no longer dominated by his impatience or sharp demands. He began to listen carefully, ask questions, and acknowledge contributions. Employees responded positively, showing more initiative and collaboration. The CEO noticed that respect and trust could create an environment where people felt valued and motivated. This understanding came directly from the lessons he had absorbed from watching the soap saleswoman. He also began to pay attention to small details that he had previously ignored. Simple gestures like greeting employees warmly, remembering their concerns, and providing guidance without pressure made a noticeable difference. People seemed more willing to share ideas, offer feedback, and cooperate. The CEO realized that leadership was not just about making decisions, but also about fostering connection and trust. These changes, though subtle, created a ripple effect throughout the company. Improving morale and results outside work, he applied the same principles. He treated family, friends, and acquaintances with more care, listening patiently and offering understanding rather than judgment. Relationships that had been strained began to improve. He discovered that patience, empathy, and attention to detail could strengthen bonds just as they improved professional interactions. The influence of the soap saleswoman had reached far beyond the fair, shaping his entire approach to life one day. He returned to the fair during the next season. The soap saleswoman greeted him with her familiar, calm smile. She noticed changes in his demeanor but did not comment. He approached her stall and observed the work she did, the attention she gave to customers, and the way she handled challenges. Each interaction reminded him of the lessons he had learned. He felt gratitude and admiration, his understanding that her consistent approach had been a guide for his transformation during his visit. He noticed a young assistant struggling to manage multiple customers at once. He watched the saleswoman guide her gently, explaining how to stay calm, prioritize, and communicate clearly. He realized that these were the same lessons he had been trying to apply in his own company. Watching her again reinforced the importance of consistency, patience, and care. He understood that real influence came from example, not from authority or force. The CEO began to reflect on the broader implications of what he had learned. He considered how many leaders relied on power, pressure, or wealth to achieve results. He realized that lasting success came from integrity, respect, and empathy. He thought about the potential to mentor others, not through commands or instructions, but by showing how to treat people with care. The lessons from the soap saleswoman had taught him a model for leadership that was sustainable, effective, and human. Over the following weeks, he continued to integrate these principles into his daily life. He listened more, acknowledged effort, and addressed challenges calmly. Conflicts were resolved with fairness and attention. Mistakes were treated as opportunities for learning rather than reasons for blame. He noticed that employees were more engaged, cooperative, and motivated. The CEO felt a deep sense of fulfillment, realizing that these changes were not temporary, but a genuine shift in his approach. He also reflected on the personal impact of these lessons. He became more patient with himself, recognizing that growth and change were gradual processes. He allowed himself to learn from mistakes, to observe, and to apply lessons thoughtfully. He discovered a sense of calm and clarity that had been absent before. The influence of the soap saleswoman had extended beyond leadership and work habits. It had shaped his mindset and approach to life. During another visit to the fair, he witnessed a situation that reinforced his understanding. A customer had difficulty deciding between products and became frustrated. The saleswoman handled the situation with patience, listening carefully and guiding without pressure. The customer left satisfied and appreciative. The CEO observed and reflected on how similar approaches could resolve tensions and misunderstandings. In his own workplace and personal life, he realized that consistent care and attention could transform interactions and relationships. He began to mentor others in his company. Using the principles he had learned, he encouraged listening, empathy, and patience, demonstrating through his actions rather than through commands. Employees noticed the difference and responded positively. The CEO understood that leadership was not about dominating, but about guiding, supporting, and building trust. The lessons from a small soap stall had become a framework for a healthier, more effective approach to managing people and situations. He also noticed the importance of gratitude and acknowledgement. Recognizing effort, showing appreciation, and celebrating small successes created a positive environment. He reflected on how the soap saleswoman consistently practiced these principles, building loyalty and trust naturally. He realized that such practices were often overlooked in fast-paced environments. Yet they were essential for sustainable success and strong relationships.